Hi, Hi everyone, and welcome to the member preview of our new exhibition, In These Uncertain Times. We're so glad you all could make it. I'm Jenna Clancy, your new membership coordinator. I'm so excited to be on board and am here as a resource for anything you may need. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few reminders. You may notice that you're muted, and we ask that you please stay muted. There are a lot of people attending this event, and it would be we're just trying to keep background noise to a minimum. So please submit any questions through the chat and we'll pull them from there for the Q&A at the end. If you're having any connectivity issues, you may want to turn off your video and that will help with the streaming. Also wanted to let you know that this is being recorded. So if you need to leave early for any reason, you'll be able to watch the rest later at your convenience. I'd also like to let you know about our first virtual family event coming up on January 23rd. We'd like to invite you to come join us for a hands-on activity making collages with some featured artists from In These Uncertain Times. It's going to be a really great event. I'd also like to let you know about our reopening plans. As you know, Santa Cruz is currently in shelter in place, which means that the museum is closed and we're unable to hold events in person. So when our plan is to open in a phased approach. So when Santa Cruz is in the red tier, we'll be able to welcome members and the member pods back to the museum on Fridays and Saturdays. And once Santa Cruz starts opening up more into orange tier and beyond, we'll be able to open up more and more, welcoming the general public and opening and expanding our hours. So we're really excited to welcome you back when we can do so safely. If you have any questions regarding any of that, please feel free to reach out to me. All right, let's get started. Up next, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Rob Wolf. So for some opening remarks.
Well, thanks, Jenna. Hi, everybody. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us for our virtual walkthrough tonight of In These Uncertain Times, which is an exhibition that explores the creativity and compassion of Santa Cruz County during the past year, during the pandemic, as seen through the eyes of over 60 local artists who so generously contributed their work and stories to this show. So first of all, a very big thank you to all of the artists for sharing their talents with us. And we're so happy that so many of you could join us tonight for this preview. And you'll be hearing a little bit later from some of our anchor artists, Abi, Dana, and Myra. So thank you so much for joining us. As Jenna said, for those of you who don't know me, and many of you don't, I'm Rob Wolf. I'm the director of the MA. And I hesitate because I was going to say the new director of the MA and realizing it's almost been a year since I've been on the job. And it's been a really weird year, right? So my journey has been interesting, but I am so privileged to be a part of this community, a part of this organization. And I want to give a big special call out to the team, the staff at the MA, who have really worked so hard this past year and been so dedicated, so creative in remaining vital, right? I think it was, we were bound and determined that the MA continue to serve as a resource for our community as we are in these uncertain times. And the best way we knew how to do that and continue to do that is to make and offer space. And whether that's outdoors in Abbott Square or in our gardens, whether that is through virtual platforms online like this, or in this case, in our galleries inside on the gallery walls. This is the MA's first interior exhibition since we closed 10 months ago. And we are really thrilled to be able to invite you, our members, back into our space. It's part of an exciting lineup that we have for 2021, which is also the 25th anniversary for the MA. In 1996, the Santa Cruz Historical Society merged with the Art Museum of Santa Cruz County. So throughout this year, we'll be celebrating this milestone with a variety of events. So please stay tuned on that. And as we move forward as an institution and as a community, we look forward to helping to spark the reconnecting and the rebuilding that will be needed as we move forward through experiences like we are sharing tonight. Before I turn this over to my colleagues, I just want to say thank you really to all of you, our very dedicated members who so generously support us. It is so important as we as an organization move forward. So from all of us, the board, the staff, thank you for your continued support. We could not do this work without you. So thank you. And to tell you more about the work, which is why you all came here, I'm pleased to turn it over to our exhibitions and projects manager, Everett O'Clean. Everett, it's all yours.
Just unmuting ourselves here. Hi, everybody. You may notice I'm wearing a mask, and that is because I'm joined here in the gallery this evening by Marla Novo, who is our exhibitions and projects director. And we're gonna do something that we have never done before, and that is do a virtual walkthrough of this exhibition. So thank you all for your patience as we kind of try out this new experiment together. We're really thrilled to have all of you joining us tonight, as well as our anchor artists who will be kind of folding into this walking tour as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and just open it up with a little bit of information. You may see this very blown out title wall behind us. We'll try not to be too dizzy making with all of the screen information, but we will walk you through the gallery very shortly. And just to kind of start us off, this exhibition has been in planning since March. When we knew that we were going to be closing our doors and trying to look for new ways to connect with, each other on staff and with artists in the community and continue to create programming, we were really thinking about how artists are using their creativity during this time. And so we sent out a survey of interest. We got a lot of response from people who are doing everything from coordinating local projects to help distribute resources during this time. We had folks who were learning how to paint, learning how to quilt, learning how to do screen printing in their driveways. People really came through, and you know how artists are just so exceptional with creative constraints. And so we wanted to be able to have a space for folks to share how they've been processing this moment and really what are the new tools that they're learning to kind of help them process grief and uncertainty. And one of the things we also wanted to recognize at this show is that while this last year has been unprecedented, is that the word that's being used a lot right now? We've been in times of uncertainty before. And so I'll just really quickly read a little bit from some of the intro text from the show, and then Marla and I are gonna walk you through the space. So we're really excited to have you join us. And if you have any questions along the way about any particular artworks, feel free to put them in the chat, and Ashley is gonna be collecting those questions and we'll be able to answer them toward the end of the event. So thank you all so much. And Ashley also just put a little note letting folks know that we are recording this event. So it will be available later if you want to come back and revisit any of these pieces or have any other questions, you can follow up with us at a later time. So one of the pieces that's been kind of rotating, and by pieces I mean articles, a lot through the pandemic is the article by Uranti Roy called "The Pandemic is a Portal." And in this piece, I'll just go ahead and read from it really briefly, but historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world. And so this isn't the first global pandemic, and it won't be the last. COVID-19 serves as a reminder that our lives are always marked by uncertainty. But thankfully, art can give us a space to grieve, process, and heal during these difficult times. If the pandemic is a portal for imagining a better world, our creativity can provide us with the tools that we need to move through it. From memorials and portraits in isolation to artworks providing emotional support to essential workers, this exhibition offers an opportunity to share our collective experience of this moment. Featuring the work of 60 local artists in these uncertain times highlights the creativity and compassion of Santa Cruz County during this global pandemic. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and walk you through some of the pieces in this show. And again, thank you all for your patience as we move through this. This is our first time doing this, and so we'll just keep refining.
Come along.
Yeah, come along. And so there are several different sections and categories that we've developed for this show. We did do a public call out for the artwork in this show. And of all of the pieces that were sent in, we received a lot of work that kind of fit very loosely into a couple of different themes. And so we'll walk through some of those themes this evening. Those include memorials of remembrance, abstract feelings, creativity and connection, and creativity during quarantine. So here we're in a section that is talking directly about COVID and features work from a number of different local artists and writers and videographers and filmmakers. This piece that Myra's showing you right now is actually a collection of work by a local registered nurse named Tanya Gilbert. And Tanya was a working nurse during COVID who wanted to find a way to share some sense of levity and lightness and some sense of catharsis during this time. And so she started collecting artwork from friends and family from all over the world and wanted to share those artworks in ERs and hospitals across Santa Cruz County. So the artwork that you see in this kind of type hang here, these are all works that traveled to different local ICUs to act as a way to support medical care workers during this time. Also in this section is a video by Gabriel Medina, who is a filmmaker, also works with Digital Nest, and made a really wonderful film about the Campesinas Caravan, Welcome Caravan. And it was this really moving film that I think you can find available, some clips and previews of the film. But it's a series of thank yous to farm workers who are always working and always under such difficult conditions, and definitely during this time even more so impacted. So he wanted to share some of the gratitude that people were expressing during this time. So definitely have to come back and check out that video. The next section in the exhibition was more focused on ways of processing grief and memorials. This is definitely a time where people are processing a lot of loss. And so this was done in a lot of different ways from a lot of different folks who are thinking about how can we have space for remembering, how can we have space for grief, and how can art allow us to do this too. And so one of the many things in addition to the pandemic, the loss of life and health, the loss of work, the economic strain, was also remembrances of people that we've lost during this time. And there's definitely been a lot of momentum that have been brought up during this time and really bringing out remembering of Black lives and honoring Black lives and the loss and violence that folks are experiencing. If you zoom in really close on this is the portrait of George Floyd. It's made up of a series of small mosaics from protests that were taken over the summer. And I'm trying to pull up some information about that. So we have hung the show, but we haven't exactly hung all of the labels yet. But this is a piece by a local artist. Marla's showing you some of the zoom-ins here from that. And we'll continue to. This is a piece by Isaac Schultz. And then you can kind of zoom out here. We also had a lot of collective pieces. So we had folks who were working together to create artworks of remembrance and of loss. This is a project by Artists Resist and Respond Together. This is a collection of ribbons. You may recognize a lot of them. They've been up all over the county for the last several months. And this is a project that Sarah Friedlander contacted us about and wanted to highlight all the different ways people are collaborating artistically and creating, moments of remembrance for us each day. And so we've gone through, we're directly dealing with COVID, we're dealing with loss and grief and remembrance. And then we kind of are going to be moving into a section that is loosely called abstract feelings. And I'm going through all of my notes here. We are joined this evening by one of our anchor artists, who you'll see behind me here. These are two pieces by local artist Myra Eastman. And Myra Eastman is here with us this evening and recorded a short video. This series is, this is part one. So this is COVID series 1, Gone People Gone. And so a lot of folks throughout the pandemic, especially early on, were having lots of feelings of not just uncertainty, but kind of disassociation. There are no figures in this painting, and she can talk to you a little bit more about how that piece has changed and evolved. This was done much later on toward the summer, and you can see how a lot of things have changed both in her work and in the style. And it's just a really neat way to be thinking about how people are processing this through abstract means. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Myra for a really quick studio visit. And Chance, I think you've got a video for us.
My name is Myra Eastman, and it is a pleasure to welcome you all to my studio. This is a heck of a time, and my latest series of paintings, COVID Diaries, saved me. All the shock, worry, confusion, and grief of the past 10 months, these paintings were and still are my only way forward. A couple of paintings in, I realized that COVID Diaries aptly describes this work and became the title for the series. A couple of these paintings are still frustratingly unresolved, but reflect a moment in time and be best not forgotten. With so much going on, every day felt, and this hasn't really stopped, crazy making. What I thought paintings were about constantly changed as current events overtook the narrative. The first painting in this series, COVID Diaries #1, Gone People Gone, started at the very beginning of the pandemic and is now at the museum. The lockdown has started. The wily virus seems to be everywhere, and we are scared, confused, and lost. Invisible in this new reality, people have disappeared. Painting #2, Miss You, started in May and began with the promise of spring as our new COVID reality continues. The landscape is disorienting. Cemeteries are filling up, and boarded up storefronts become poignant street murals. #3, San Francisco, began as a lament for my son and all those who live alone in tiny apartments, isolated and trapped in solitude. Social distancing is becoming normalized. New York City runs out of mortuaries, and the Black Lives Matter movement is stirring. The Nick #4 is also at the museum and began during the summer. I began the painting as a tribute to our communal downtown spaces, and especially the Nickelodeon, which I dearly miss. Again, as current events exploded during the summer with racial justice marches, anti-lockdown rallies, and horrifying murders by Boogaloo Boy militias turning up in our own backyard, the painting turned and became something else. Back to School #5 narrates the strange, depressing sight of mass students and teachers and parents figuring out how to start the new school year. As a retired school teacher, late August still pulls me in as a time of excitement and just a little dread. Boy, was this year ever different. #6, Orange Sky, began Wednesday morning, August 20th, a day I don't think many of in Santa Cruz will ever forget. I cried through this painting, knowing about friends, acquaintances, entire neighborhoods evacuated, with lives, animals, homes, studios lost. Heroic locals jumped in to save what they could, and we all endured weeks of checking the Purple Air app to see if and when we could go outside. COVID Diaries number 4, Vote, Make a Plan, brings us to the fall and the presidential election. The painting began as a celebration of Gail Pellerin's fabulous vote-mobile. In these crazy times, people were being encouraged to not just vote, but to really figure out how to vote. We were commanded to, quote unquote, make a plan to make sure our vote counted. Trump rallies continue to attract armed militias and anti-democratic elements. On my easel is my latest painting, no title yet, it's just a couple of weeks old. It began as the very first COVID vaccines are starting to be administered. I had thought this painting would be full of happy people getting poked in the arm. But again, current events took over and Los Angeles turned deadly. I was born and raised in LA, and my heart hurts at the tragedies in Southern California as the bodies pile up. There it is. This is how I have spent the last 10 months. I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to show you this work, and especially to Ma's exhibition and projects manager Everett, whose summer email inviting me into this exhibition was an unexpected gift. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Myra. Myra is one of the anchor artists for this exhibition. Since we began this process in March, we had no idea how people were going to respond, if they had the emotional and physical capacity to be making artwork at this time. So we did reach out to several anchor artists who had works that they were already developing, and they really helped us kind of guide this exhibition and kind of help frame the different sections the work is going to be in. And before I leave this section, I'm going to head back over to the ribbons just to read a really quick piece from a writer named Zadie Smith. And Zadie Smith said, "I used to think that there would one day be a vaccine, that if enough Black people named the virus, explained it, demonstrated how it operates, videoed its effects, protested it peacefully, revealed how widespread it really is, how the symptoms arise, how so many Americans keep giving it to each other, irresponsibly and shamefully, generation after generation, causing intolerable and unending damage both to individual bodies and to the body politic. I thought that if knowledge became as widespread as possibly could be managed or imagined, that we might finally reach some kind of herd immunity. I don't think that anymore." If you want to read more from Zadie Smith, that's from her book, Intimations, which she wrote actually during the pandemic and was released several months ago. Feel free to pick up a copy from Bookshop Santa Cruz. The pandemic has laid bare the inequities created by our social systems for centuries. The disproportionate impact the virus has had on the health and well-being of Black and Brown communities sheds light on the systemic injustice in our country. As we make time to collectively grieve and recover from this virus, we must also work to heal the trauma of systematic racism to create a more equitable world for everyone. And I'm kind of just reading through some of the text that would be available if you were here with us right now. And I've seen some questions kind of coming in a little bit, and we'll be sure to go ahead and answer them toward the end of the program tonight. Ashley's going to be collecting those as we go. So we're going to continue to loop around the back wall of the gallery, Marla and I in this space. We had folks that were tracing shadows to create abstract images, understanding and trying to pass time in different ways. We had folks who were using the framework of abstraction to think about some of their emotions they had in Zoom meetings. So if these boxes look eerily familiar as Zoom meeting boxes, that is why. So a lot of different work that was kind of focused around just really being free and flowing with feelings of anxiety and just kind of getting it out of your body and processing it creatively. So we're going to continue over into the, is it west, is it north, this side of the gallery? I've never actually thought to ask that before.
We'll say west.
To the left.
Yes, to the left.
So continuing on, we had artists who were trying to creatively adapt to the studio spaces that they were in. We had artists who didn't have access to a photo developing lab like they would have in school or with other shared spaces. So they ended up making photo developing labs in their bathrooms, in their bathtubs at home. Really kind of using this moment to develop their process in new ways, being creative, getting clever. We had folks reflecting on this moment by repurposing and reclaiming objects. So this piece is a product of plastic culture that was actually created from reclaimed plastics from Elkhorn Slough, and really kind of thinking about waste and reclamation and kind of having a better understanding and relationship with the land. There were folks who were thinking about the scale of this pandemic and thinking about scale overall. In this piece, someone was trying to map out the cosmology of the universe and also of our own brain chemistry. And there is a really wonderful project associated with this that we can provide some links for as well. Again, it's so hard to try and talk about every single piece in the show, and we won't be able to do that tonight. And this is in no means a comprehensive tour of the exhibition, but we will be having opportunities. This exhibition is open until May, and we will be creating more resources and opportunities for folks to really dig deeper into each one of these works. And next up, we have Abi Mustapha, who is our artist in residence, who created this piece, Becoming. And this is actually part of an artist residency. While we were closed, this whole space was empty. We had decided to take down an exhibition that had been up for a while, and we really wanted to think of a way to use our space cleverly and also be able to provide space for folks who might need access to what we had available. And in this case, we thought of Abi, who has been doing large-scale works on paper and we wanted to provide an opportunity for her to think big and work at a larger scale. And so it was an absolute pleasure and delight to have her in this space. She was working alone. I was in another room, but just being able to see that process grow and change over the 2.5 months that she was here with us was really transformative and really beautiful. And we're lucky enough to have Abi here. And also there's a really wonderful blog post and a podcast interview from Abi if you want to hear more about that residency experience as well, and that's available on our website. And now we're going to turn it over to Abi, who is joining us from her new studio over at the Tannery.
Hi, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Okay. This piece was one of 4 other large scale pieces that I did, and I did several. I have 2 smaller ones behind me, and they're 3 in total of the smaller pieces. This piece specifically came out of that void of not knowing what was going to happen and not knowing what I needed to create for. And I think that a lot of times puts us in this fear mode, and you can choose fear or you can choose curiosity. And I think when I first started this piece and the other pieces in the MA when I was doing the residency and I had all this space, it was like, oh my God, I have so much space. What am I going to do with this? I have to do something really special, instead of like realigning to the idea that like, no, I have to do me. What do I want to do here? I want to make large scale pieces. I want to make large scale pieces of my process. And I like things that are beautiful, that inspire me. So there was this pressure to create something that like meant something in this exact time, to go through these exact things, and realizing that just who I am and what I was living was an expression of what people are going through in this time. So this piece has had many iterations. I've put mixed media on it and taken it off. I've like added and taken away many times. And in the end, it boiled down to this feeling of expansion that I wanted to express in this piece of just beauty, of someone in the void and able to flow with that and able to just be and to see it as a beautiful aspect of unknowing, and how that can be sparkly and beautiful in all of that unknowingness. And that's what became of that piece. You know, I had several other pieces that went to a museum exhibition that's opening today as well in Indiana. And it was the same thing with those. As soon as I decided to let go and just create whatever was coming to me in the moment with the process of creating during this time, they all turned out to be exactly what they were supposed to be, and to express exactly what was in the moment. Some of them had mixed media on them, some of them didn't. They all have a solid color background, and there is one thing solid in all of them, and that is the personality of whoever is there. It's like there's humanness in this. This is solid, and colors represent so many different things for so many people. And in this piece specifically, that blue violet that's in there, it reminds me of expansion and royalty and prestige, and this thing that I was trying to encompass in this piece with this beautiful woman. And so that's what ended up coming out. And it was just a response to me going through my own process of feeling chosen and then not chosen, and then being a person of color who was offered, you know, in the beginning, the pandemic was really hard for me. And then, you know, as it, you know, continued on and I continued to do my artwork, the process of evaluating all of these opportunities that were coming up, you know, like, do people actually want my art, or do they just need a Black person right now, or a person of color to fill in this like space of like, okay, we're woke, we're doing this thing, when it was really confusing for me. And I wanted to take every single opportunity because I needed it for my career. And then I was also very conflicted about it. So I was trying to do pieces that catered to each individual person's want, instead of coming back to that void and just expressing myself exactly as I am in the art that I wanted to put out into the world. And so this piece specifically, I did come back to center, and I was able to just create something beautiful that in itself, I hope, reflects just a beauty that we see in the world that everyone can relate to and be inspired by. It was a long journey, a long process. And I don't know if everything I've said is reflected in that piece, but it took a lot to come to that journey of just accepting my art for exactly what it is, and myself in that for exactly as I am, and what I'm here to share and not to cater to, and not always questioning, you know, the motives behind things, and taking it at face value for what people really mean to do in the world, or want to like show as being expressed. So, don't know if you can get all that from the art, but that was all the things that went into that. I'm done.
Thank you, Abby. Let me share. Okay, I am. Unmute myself. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Abby, so much. It's so good to see you, even if through the screen. And thank you so much for sharing your process and that whole experience here at the MA. It was definitely been a formative part of the last couple of months, at least for me. And working with each and every one of these artists throughout this process was just a really wonderful opportunity for us at the MA to try to keep connected with artists and keep hearing these stories and keep trying to provide opportunities for people to share these stories was really important for us. And so that was why we developed this show, and why we're really excited to share it with more people as we are able, as we go forward with this reopening process. And it will be a process, but I think that once you get an opportunity to just be in this space, even in small groups at some point, it really is just cathartic being in this room with everyone's individual story shared in one space. And that's really difficult for me to kind of articulate over a Zoom meeting, but it really kind of helps process a lot of individual but also collective moments of how we're processing through all of this. And so thank you, Abby, for being part of that process. And thank you to all of our exhibiting artists if you're joining us this evening as well for being part of that. And one of the ways that people chose to keep connected through this time was by doing personal practices that they could share in ways that were available. And one of those ways was by mailing art. And so a lot of folks did these wonderful projects that really shared what they were working on in their own practice by mailing artwork to others. This is a piece that was a series of silk screen done in the artist's driveway. The accordion folds up and fits into this envelope, and she did a series of those and then mailed them to a series of friends. We had another mail project where folks created a piece and mailed it out to friends and family members. A similar idea here, but more focusing on flowers. The artist was spending a lot of time in their garden. And that was another theme that came up a lot in all of this work, since we were collectively slowing down in this really unique way that I think many of us had not experienced before. More folks were connecting in different ways with nature and the outdoors. And so there's a lot of nature imagery that came up throughout the show and throughout a lot of the works that artists contributed. Have some features of the San Lorenzo River. So looking at the ecology of the San Lorenzo River and really spending time with reconnecting to place here specifically in Santa Cruz County. We have another piece from Sarah Bianco, who is another one of our anchor artists. I love kind of how she ended up adapting these flowers in the shape of lungs and really thinking about how we've been, one of the kind of key pieces of this moment is learning to breathe, but also, you know, really protecting our lungs in ways of health and also dealing with a lot of the smoke issues that we had experienced over the summer. This really just kind of encapsulated a lot of different experiences that folks were having. I believe this piece is called Protect What You Love by Sarah Fianco. And Sarah created this piece as part of the at-home mural project, which Dana Peters is going to talk to you a little bit more about. The video piece behind me was also created for the at-home mural project, but was reimagined and redesigned for this exhibition. The original piece, Dana can tell you exactly how big it is, but it's in her studio space over on the west side. And when we went to think about how to install it in this show, you know, so much has changed between when the piece was first imagined for the Stay at Home Mural Festival and where she is in her life now. And so she's going to tell us a little bit about her process, how she started developing that piece, and what it means to her. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Dana. Are you there, Dana?
Can you hear me? All right. Is this going to be kind of a Q&A between you and I, Everett? Or would you like me to just start by talking about the in-home mural?
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the at-home mural festival and kind of how that was brought about and your involvement in it?
Yeah, definitely. So I was, someone told me about it. Rachel Barnes, Human Shaped Animal, she's another local artist. She actually told Sarah and I about it, and that's what got us involved. Let's see. Oh, and I can also, well, here it is behind me, the original one. And I also put together kind of an in-process little PowerPoint, if you guys wouldn't mind me screen sharing real quick. Let's see here. All right. Is everyone seeing my screen, or are you still seeing me? You're seeing me and the screen. Good. All right. So the Stay at Home Mural Festival project was a way to keep everyone in the whole world connected, really, when we were all kind of stuck inside our homes. So let's see here. Like I said, Sarah and my friend Rachel thought it would be a good way for us to connect as friends and to the art world at large by participating in this project kind of alone and together at the same time. My project that I was working on is called Enter the Chrysalis. And we posted in progress shots throughout the whole week of Earth Week. And it was a really, really nice way to feel connected in isolation. Like seeing what everyone was doing and knowing that people are working on the same exact thing you're working at the same time, even though you're physically alone in a separate space, really got that feeling of connection back into my life. So I was really grateful for that. And the imagery I chose for the mural was a chrysalis, a moth chrysalis. And that was what I was feeling at the moment. Like when a caterpillar enters a chrysalis, they're not just like sprouting wings, they're actually completely disintegrating into goo and cells and then reforming into a completely different creature. And when I read about that, I was like, oh my God, that's totally what I'm feeling. I feel like everything's falling apart. And like Abby was saying, like instead of looking towards the future in fear, trying to be open to what's going to be on the other side, what new things are going to arise. I have a little blurb about that. Enter the Chrysalis captures my own pondering in the upheaval of COVID-19. What are the parts of us that are going to make it through this chrysalis stage intact? What is going to be left behind? And what new surprises will emerge? And since then, there have been a few surprises. I am pregnant, which I didn't know when I started this mural and wrote that. So it's kind of just a brand new journey that I was not expecting to take right now. And it led to kind of a development of a version 2 of this mural. Here's me working on the first version. And as time went by and this museum show kept getting postponed, I was like, this is less and less relevant. So I decided to create a different version, including pictures, very first pictures of my little one. And let me see if I can hide these. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, and that was a really fun thing to do. I was kind of, it's kind of funny. Whenever I use really bright hot pink colors, people think I'm really happy, but it's actually the opposite. When I'm using my hot pinks and neons, it's usually a way to my kind of like pick me up strategy. And I'm doing better now. So I'm actually more muted in my colors. But this is version 2, a lot bigger, now installed at the museum with projection video overlaid on top of it with using metallic paint. So it kind of reflects and shows a lot of progression and transition that this piece went through, that my life went through. Let's see. I do have a quick video. Let me see if it will work. For you guys. There's no sound, so it's just a video of kind of how when I was conceptualizing it on my computer to when I was drawing it onto a wall, painting it, and then how it changed from March till just a couple days ago when I finished working on it at the museum. So it's quite a transition. And you can see this projected on top of the second mural at the museum whenever you're able to re-enter. Let's see. Little ultrasound video up in the corner. I'm fascinated by it. And then it fades, and what you're left with is the mural that is, let's see, that is on the museum wall. Let's see here. There we go, back here. Some other things I've been working on this year were masks with Idea Fab Labs and instructionals on how to make masks for healthcare workers when there were shortages. It's hard to remember that now, that there's been so many things that happened that seems so long ago. But sewing hundreds of masks led me to get into embroidery and sewing and repurposing clothing. Another thing I've been doing during my time. Also led to artist series masks, using my artwork as print on masks. And then laser cutting clothes. And I was asked to be part of Pivot during the pandemic, a local fashion show that meets every year. But this year, they did not have a fashion show. They had a socially distant drive-in theater at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk. And I've just been really impressed with places like the museum and Pivot that have really been creative in finding new ways to keep art going in Santa Cruz. I was really grateful to be a part of this. This was just responding to being pregnant and feeling like I'm bursting open with newness. And these were other models who were pregnant during the pandemic as well. I've also gone into embroidery, and embroidery for me has really been more about feeling close to people. You spend hours and hours and hours working on one thing that is meant for one person. And so it's my way of feeling intimacy with people that I can't physically be with as much as I'd like to. That shirt is for future child of mine. This jacket was for my friend Sarah Bianco, who's also in the show. And I'm also working on a painting that I have no timeline for, no reason for, just something that's been in the background and I take out and work on every so often. So that's what I've been working on. Let me see if I can get back to you guys. All right, I'm back. Are you there, Everett? That's all for me. Let me see. I'm not hearing anything. Maybe it's.
We're just having a little bit of technical difficulties. Chance, if you could add Everett back as co-host. Dramatic pause. Thank you for everyone for waiting.
Oh, wonderful. We're back. Hey. And this is how you can really tell that we're in the gallery, is because our Wi-Fi is very spotty in a building that is encased in concrete. So we got kicked off for a minute there. But luckily, Dana was there to share more about her work. So thank you so much, Dana, for sharing out all the slides and all of the projects that you're working on right now. Prolific. And so, yeah, we're just really happy to have you join us here. And it was really neat reimagining this mural in this space as a video piece too. So since I got kicked off the Zoom, unfortunately, I couldn't see the questions, but we are gonna have the Q&A. And but before we kind of get to that, I did see one question where folks were asking about specific names of artists and to stay on a couple of different pieces. And again, this is unfortunately not a super comprehensive walkthrough of the show, because I think that would be a much longer event. So thanks everybody for your patience, and feel free to follow up with us on any other questions about any works that you have. We definitely have information to share out more about that work. So one of the last pieces that we're going to share for this, and if we can, are we still on Dana, or are we coming back to the gallery here? Can folks see me in here?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'm just looking at Dana. Um, all right. Thank you everyone for your patience. This is our first time doing something like this. And so it's just as much an experiment for us as it is for you. So thank you. One of the last major installation style pieces we had for this show, and hopefully I won't lose you when I walk over here, is a piece by Ann Hazels. And Ann Hazels is the director of Radius Gallery over at the Tannery. You may know her. And she's also a working artist. And she has been working on this piece. Here's one section of it. But this piece actually goes and wraps around the entire gallery. You may have seen it kind of popping in and out of some of the other works that we have been looking at and talking about earlier this evening. And I just kind of wanted to end on that note for this exhibition, because that piece is about incremental change and looking at incremental change over time. And that's something that we're really all kind of working through and working on together at this time. And so as we all continue to work through this together, we really look forward to being able to invite people into this space when it's safe to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ashley for the Q&A, and Marla and myself and Dana and Abby and Myra are all available for questions if folks have them. So thank you for joining us tonight. We wish that we could all be in this space together, and hopefully we will be soon. It has been an absolute joy and a pleasure to work on this with everyone involved. And I especially want to shout out the rest of our exhibitions team who are not here with us tonight. Justin Collins and Michaela Clark, who are just an incredible team to work with, and we wouldn't have been able to get this show up without you. Some fun behind the scenes. We also installed the show socially distanced, so there was never more than one person in the gallery at a time. So it's a lot of fun tag teaming. And so all new things, all kinds of creative pivots, and thanks everyone for joining us along the way.
Great, thanks Everett. So I'm going to be reading questions from the chat. So as things come up for you, feel free to pop them in. I guess we'll start off. Anita's asking, will we be able to see all the work and artist names as an online exhibit at some point?
That is a fabulous question. So the MOD does do online exhibitions, and we do have a couple up right now. An online exhibition is definitely another big project. And if for some reason we aren't able to open to the public by the time that the show's open, it's something that we will likely consider. But we will have other programs and other virtual opportunities for folks to be able to share out work. So keep an eye on our social media. We'll be highlighting pieces and also through our blog posts and other ways to connect online. So there will be more opportunities to see more of the work in detail, promise.
Perfect. Nick is asking, what film titles, if legible, are on the Nickelodeon in Myra's work?
That's a great question. Let's go check it out, Marla. So we're heading back over to Myra's work, and apologize if it's a little Blair Witch Project-y, but it looks like actually the titles on the kiosk are just notes to the public saying, because your life depends on it, coming soon, vote. As folks have kind of probably seen around town, a lot of the kiosks around town have been including just notes of encouragement. And so that's what was reflected in that piece. Myra, do you want to talk any more about the kiosk?
Yeah, it was right before the election. So that's, it really felt like our life did depend on it. So that's what I was trying to say. And it was just really I miss downtown so much and community and people. So that's really what the painting's about.
Great. Great. What's our next question?
Sue's asking if you could do a final walkthrough and just maybe from the front, maybe show how you would go through it.
Sure. Ooh, okay, let's go. Marla and I are going to walk through it as though you and I are in this space together. So let's start at the very beginning.
Should we do like
It's a very
this?
good place to
Let's
start,
start.
right? Let us This table will not be featured in the exhibition, but it is our tech table. So you would come in this door here, and the first thing that you would see is our title wall, which is like a little blown out. But so you would come in this space, you would read what I read to you earlier on in the evening, and then you would progress through the room. There isn't a necessary like linear order, so you could go left to right, right to left. As long as you stay 6 feet apart from the person next to you, it's all good. But we'll just do a quick walkthrough of the last bit of pieces. And Ashley, do you want to read me another question and I can answer it as we're doing a final walkthrough?
Yeah. How often do you change the content that we show?
How often do we change the content of that show?
I'm not sure if it's the content of this exhibition in particular, or just maybe that gallery space.
Gallery, yeah. So this gallery changes over 2 to 3 times a year. So exhibitions are typically between 4 to 6 months long a piece. And we're still walking through, so we'll be answering questions as we do one last walkthrough of the space. I also recorded a video earlier in case our Wi-Fi didn't work, and so I'll have that available too in the coming weeks for folks as well, which has a lot more close-ups. It has some Ken Burns style shifting. We don't have a videographer on staff, but maybe that's the next piece. Got this 3D printed mask here. Got our safety monkeys. We've got a shrine to Mural and all of the objects that are difficult to get a hold of early in the pandemic. Any other questions from folks as we just do one last walk through the space?
Yeah, we have a couple more. How does working during the pandemic compare to normal times? Maybe answer as like a staff member, and maybe an artist could answer as well.
That would be great. Maybe we can hear from an artist first, and then I can talk about things, on the staff. And Marla and I maybe can do a little chatting.
What was the question again?
How does working during the pandemic compare to quote unquote normal times?
Isolation. And less, for me, this is Dana. I don't know if I'm showing, but for me, it was less directed, like there's not shows happening and open calls so much. So you're kind of really making art for different reasons, or I was. So making art for friends or for myself rather than for an exhibition or for selling. So that was really different. And yeah, just really more things coming from internal deep places. So I don't know. I'm really curious to hear what the other artists have to say about that.
Can you hear me? This is Abby.
We can hear you.
I think in the beginning of the pandemic, I was making art for myself, but because it coincided with all of the protests and Black Lives Matter, it actually became a really busy time for me. And so I feel like I had a really different experience than a lot of people who were shifting into that. Like now I'm just creating to create because I have the time to create and I have the space and all of that. It was like, I got asked to do all these projects all of a sudden, and it was really overwhelming and really stoked. And then it was overwhelming, and it was like this back and forth with that. And some of the projects weren't even the type of art that I do, but it was just people like needing an artist of color. And so it got really overwhelming for me actually in the beginning of the pandemic, where I, initially was just like, okay, now I have some time to create. And I need to like build up my, the amount of work that I have so that when shows happen, I have art to put into all these shows that will be happening someday. It went from that to these proposals for jobs or being part of a project or things like that. And then you know, the whole process of having to navigate which things to say yes to and to say no to. And as an artist, I think initially you want to say yes to everything, because you're like, oh, now I can pay the bills as an artist if I just do all these jobs. But a lot of them actually weren't in alignment with the type of art that I did. They just needed like my face to go on things. And so, so my process in like making art during the pandemic was one of like, it was a growing process of sifting and staying in alignment with what I want to become as an artist. And then it eventually circled back around to the creating art for the purpose of creating art, to show my experience in the world and lots of beauty and just making pretty things again, like things that I thought were beautiful. So it was a big growing process that circled back to what it should have been in the beginning, which is just like, okay, now I have space to create, you know, what is important to me. That's it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So for me, it was just pure survival. That's all it was. It was to be able to go in the studio every day. And I think I just thrive on routine, and everything was just so awful and crazy, especially in the beginning, that I just knew I could go in the studio and work. And I'm grateful that I had that work to do. The only way I could process everything was to put it down. And it just was always changing. It's been tough.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Abby. We have a question, Everett. Maybe you have time for one or two more questions. Does that feel okay? Cool.
Sounds great.
Asking, would it be possible to have another Zoom soon to see the pieces in the show and hear the artists' names, and maybe help the artists feel more seen and connected? I would note, though, all the artist names are listed on the website, and we do hope to continue to expand on that exhibition page as we promote the opening of the show. But Everett, maybe talk about the upcoming programs and how we're going to share the show in the meantime while our doors are closed.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we are trying to adjust as the conditions continue to change. And so we will be developing more online programs and opportunities for folks to engage with the work in a deeper way. And so we'll be looking at other opportunities for artists to also come in and talk about their own work and share out those in other virtual formats as well. So we would love to continue being able to continue, we would love to be able to continue connecting artists in different ways. And so we will definitely be updated for everyone here who is a member. If you're an exhibiting artist, we've got your email, and we will definitely be updating you as those programs become available.
Great. And then, do all the artists live in Santa Cruz?
Excellent question. Yes, so all the call out for the show went out to everyone in Santa Cruz County. And so the criteria for the show was that you had to be a resident of Santa Cruz County, but that also included some UCSC students who were residents of Santa Cruz County. And unfortunately, during this time, we had one artist who had to go home abroad and got stuck. So that is maybe the only case where one of the artists is not currently in Santa Cruz County.
Sounds like a technicality.
Technicality.
I think there's not another question in the chat, but one thing that I've heard just around the staff, do you want to talk about how normally our exhibitions have an interactive element and what you envision that to be later on?
Yeah, so interactives are something that the MA is really known for. And that becomes a tricky thing because we want to be able to keep things clean and safe for people. And oftentimes that means cleaning things in between use or finding touchless interactive opportunities. We did set up a pandemic dispatch line for this exhibition. And that's a phone number that folks can call in and leave their pandemic stories and experiences. They get saved as MP3 files. And then we'll be able to share out some of those experiences through our podcast series and through other various social outlets. And so that's our interactive for this exhibition. I think going forward, we're really going to have to reimagine the different ways that we create interactive and engaging experiences in the MA. We're still really committed to doing that. And so as we continue to have new exhibitions rotating into the space, we'll be keeping in mind what are some ways to actually have folks be physically engaged and creating and participating in new ways. And so that's definitely something that, you know, we're still working on, and the whole field at large is really working on. Like, you think of a children's museum at this time, and it's just, it kind of blows my mind if you were dealing with an all interactive exhibition. So there are definitely things that we're thinking about really critically.
And interesting enough, it was something that we were already thinking of before the pandemic, sort of thinking about the way how we interact within galleries. Again, we're always going to do that, but we want to be a little more thoughtful how we do it as far as materials and how we engage folks. And so anyway, it was something that was already on our minds. And then of course the pandemic forced us to go into this way right now. But it's an interesting conversation and something that we're going to keep talking about, and love all of your input too about it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. If folks have ideas that they would like to share with us for other projects and opportunities, we're always here to listen. And so we love emails from the public about possibilities, and so we always like to explore this as much as we can. Great. Well, it looks like that's the end of our questions. Thank you, everyone, again, so much for taking the time to join us this evening in this walkthrough experiment. We can't wait to see you here again at the MA. And in the meantime, wash your hands, wear a mask, stay safe, take care of each other. We're gonna make it through. And we're just so delighted to have been able to have this experience coordinating this exhibition and finding new ways to share it with the public. And we look forward to continuing to do that. So thank you all so much. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you. Thank you, artists and members. We really appreciate you.
We love you.
We miss you.